Hello everyone. So I'm here in my little cozy setup tonight, and I am going to film my 2022 stats video. So I'm going to go through my Goodreads stats and also my spreadsheet that I use to track my books, because of course I'm crazy and I don't just use Goodreads. I also track my books in another place as well. So I have some very interesting stats to look to, and let's get started. Alright, so here I am on my year in books. So I read 213 books. And actually before I said that I never read more than 200 books in a year, but that is false. Last year I actually read way more, which we'll see in a second. I read over 66,000 pages, which is pretty good, I think. The shortest book was Mama and Mommy and Me in the Middle, which is a very cute sapphic picture book. And then the longest book was a textbook I needed for my library science degree, so I didn't even count that in any wrap-ups. My average book length was 311 pages, so I kind of erred on the short side this year, but I did read some bigger books as well, especially towards the end of the year. But yeah, I like my short books, alright? I do. The most shelved, most popular book was Seven Husbands, of course. And then another book for my library science degree was the least shelved. My average rating was actually amazing. I am so proud of myself for this. It is a 4.0. That's good. I don't know what it was last year, but it was way lower than that. I feel like I've never gotten this as an average rating. This is really high, and I feel like I am still learning about my reading tastes. I am definitely doing a lot better. I have a breakdown of all the ratings in my spreadsheet that you will be able to see how many of each star I have. So I'm really happy with that. The highest rated that I read, The Hill We Climb, of course, amazing. My first review of the year, How High We Go in the Dark. I did love that book. That was an amazing, amazing book. And here are all my books, all 213 of them, which is exciting. My last review is The Dawn of Young Chen, which if you watched my December wrap-up, you know that it needed more focus on Young Chen herself. Alrighty, so let's get into my stats from Goodreads. So like I said, I was mistaken. Last year I read 234 books because I just went wild. I don't know what I was doing. I read so much, like more than humanly possible. I don't know what I was doing, but this year was a little bit less at 213. So let's see the very pretty spread, which is so pretty. I love it. So most of the books I read were 4 stars. That's fine, but I did have quite a lot of 5 stars as well, and 3 stars, you know, not that many 1 and 2s, which I was very, very glad about. So let's see. Publication year is always weird on Goodreads, but who knows? Yeah, so this is where I am now, and Dracula was the oldest book that I read last year, which is, you know, always interesting. But I did read a lot of 2022 releases, so yeah. Books over time is always interesting as well. So we can see, I mean, we'll see that in my spreadsheet as well, but the month that I read the most was June with 28 books, Pride Month. So I read a lot of great queer books. And the month I read the least was February. Yeah, I was going through it in February, so I did not read that many books, but still 9 is not that bad. Alrighty, so let's go to my stats. First, I want to go through monthly stats. Okay, so this is my book stats 2022. I use Hardback Hoarder's book stats Excel sheet. She did make a new one for this year, which you have to pay for, and I don't want to do that. Not that her work isn't worth it. It's not worth it for me to pay for it, but she did make a lot of great changes, and honestly it's really tempting to buy the new one, but I digress. So this is the old one from last year. That's my point. So my best reading month here, we're starting January, 4.15, because I had Baruch Ormond and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo all in January. That was a very good reading month. Let's see. June was also pretty good, very close to that, of course, because of all the queer books. And then November again was very good because there was a lot of nonfiction books, and I usually rate those 5 stars, and a lot of books by Indigenous authors, which were all really amazing. So let's see the worst reading month. September was really not great. Yeah. September and March. Okay, September and March, interesting. So, yeah. All right, so let's go to the actual yearly stats. So here it says this, because Goodreads just counts every book as if you read it physically, but I did not. I listened to a lot of books. 1630. That's a lot. That's a lot. What? Let's see. 1630.5. How many days of my life? Okay. So that's almost 68 days, but it was pointed out to me last year that I read books at like 1.75 speed most of the time, so it's not actually that many hours, but it's still a lot. So all right, so I don't know why this says 216, but Goodreads says 213. Oh, because I count some DNFs on here. That is why. So the books per month, like I said, February was my worst reading month at 9, June was the best at 28, and then it's kind of averaging, high teens, low 20s, and December dropped off again because I was quite busy. The format, almost always audio. I did read pretty much the same, physical and ebook, which was interesting. I did get a lot of NetGalley e-arcs, which is probably the cause of that. And my audiences, I do read mostly adult. I read some middle grade, some children's, which is kind of new. I don't think I read any children's book last year. And YA still a good chunk, 62 out of 213. That's pretty good. Yeah, like almost 30%. Own voices I don't track. See, this is why I kind of want to get the new Stats Excel, because the way that this tracks like diverse books is a little bit different, and it's kind of difficult to track because it's hard to count because identity is a very sometimes hard to define thing, especially gender. Some genders you just don't know, but I do usually read mostly female authors for good reason. And so this year was definitely not any different. Yeah, 2/3 of my books were female authors. And then actually I am so happy. I read 31 non-binary authors, which was amazing. Maybe not like all different authors, but 31 of the books that I read were by non-binary authors. And I am so happy about that, because last year I was just pitiful. It was pitiful. I don't remember the number, but it was pitiful. So I really tried to step up my game, and it was great. I loved it. So I'm definitely going to keep that trend going next year, or this year. It's already 2023. And this is what I'm talking about with the author race. I like to track it because here you can see, like I am reading, more than half of my books are from authors of color, which is great, but Latinx or Latine authors are still really, really low, and Pacific Islanders is 0. So I like to track it because I like to see where my blind spots are, so to speak. That's not really the right term, but where I need to put in a little bit more work. But the new spreadsheet doesn't track it like this, for also good reason, because a lot of author identities it's hard to track. And it's just, there's a lot of races here that maybe aren't included, and it's hard. Like one author that I'm going to read from is Armenian, and is that considered Asian? Is it considered not? It's not European. I don't know. Like it's hard. So there's a lot of things like that. So a lot of that I just put into mixed or unknown sometimes. So yeah, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect system, but I like to do it because I just like to keep track for me personally, because Goodreads doesn't do this. So yes, so of course I would love to get the numbers a bit more even, but I'm much happier with how this graph looks this year than it did last year, so progress is being made. And books read from, almost all of them are from the library, which makes sense because I work at my library, so they better be from my library. And a lot of them are also from the publishers because of the ARCs. And then some are from Book of the Month. More than one is. I don't know what I'm doing here. And some of them I just bought for myself. So yeah. So this is then the ratings. So 59 books were 5 stars, which is pretty good, but I want that number to be higher. This year, am I gonna say this? I don't know. Like, if I don't think it's gonna be a 5-star, am I gonna DNF it? No, that's too intense. But basically what I'm trying to say is I'm going to make a very concerted effort to DNF books that I'm not enjoying, and to read books that I really think I'm gonna enjoy. Like, reading should not be a chore. Like, I shouldn't read something just because I'm like, oh, like I'm already halfway through it and I should put it in my wrap-up video. Like, no. If I feel like I'm wasting my time in any way, I should DNF a book. So this coming year, I really hope that this graph is going to be much more on the 5 and 4.5 star range. But honestly, there's not that many bad books. I mean, I DNF'd 6. 1 star was only 1 and 2 stars was 6. So that's really not that bad. 2.5 was only 2. So all in all, it was pretty good. There were a bit more 3 stars than I would like, though. I don't know, like, why things were so average for me, but you know, 4 stars, 62, that's a good chunk, so I'm pretty happy with this. And then lastly, we have genres read. This is always very, very interesting for me personally. Last year was a ton of sci-fi, but this year only 25. So sci-fi is my favorite genre. So, I mean, it still takes up a good chunk. I read many more contemporaries than usual, I feel, but horror is the one that really changed from last year to this year. Last year, I don't think I read that many horror at all, but this year was really my horror era. Starting from like August up till now, I've been reading a ton of horror and I'm loving it. I don't know, I just discovered that I love it, so I'm just gonna continue doing that because it's been really, really fun. And fantasy, of course, is always high, of course, at 45. So yeah, and nonfiction was a bit lower than last year as well, but for Nonfiction November, I always read a ton of nonfiction, and that's not going to change in 2023. So this is my 2022 stats wrap up. Out of the 213 books, I'd say that I did a pretty good job reading diversely and reading what I feel like I would like, because my goal was always to read 5 stars. I don't want to put myself through things that I don't think I'm gonna like, so I'm really gonna try and do that next year as well. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to my channel for more bookish videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye!